In this week's Closer Look, the city of Seattle made history on Monday when it raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, far and away the highest in the country. So will that experiment inspire other cities or scare them away? Our experts here to take on that debate after this report from ABC's Neal Karlinsky in Seattle.
Make our wages supersize.
Across the country, this spring has seen protests by fast food workers demanding a raise.
Fast food workers and all workers deserve a living wage.
Democrats are listening, hoping it'll be a winning issue for them in the midterm elections.
The minimum wage, even if it doesn't affect you and your family, is an issue of basic fairness. Whose side are you on?
In Seattle this week, they've heard the concern and done something no other city has come close to. Raising the minimum wage to more than double the federal rate, an unprecedented $15 an hour, the nation's highest hourly wage.
If we want to regain our economic strength and be competitors in the nation, the minimum wage is going to have to raise.
Newly elected Seattle Mayor Ed Murray says his city is setting an example others should follow, and he is not afraid of the criticism.
I'm sure you've read and heard some of these things. Murray seems ready to turn his city into a gigantic laboratory for one of the most ambitious and quite possibly misbegotten labor market experiments in recent history.
I don't think this is a misbegotten experiment. I think we are acting as a laboratory of democracy because the federal government is not acting. The Seattle approach is the middle out. You rebuild the middle class, you get back to a vibrant economy.
I'm very concerned about this.
Restaurant owner Linda DeLello Morton says her cafe and others will almost certainly be forced to lay off workers and possibly close because $15 an hour will put her in the red.
Some of us might lose our livelihood if we can't keep our businesses open, but who's really going to pay for it are the workers in the restaurant industry. Once we get to 15, the cafe it's pretty difficult to even remain viable and remain open.
The new rate will be phased in over several years to give business owners time to prepare. The International Franchise Union isn't waiting and plans to sue to protect small businesses, but the mayor says he isn't worried.
I actually feel pretty excited about the work we did, the very difficult negotiations we had between business, labor, and nonprofits to reach a good balance. And I think it's a model for the nation to look at.
For this week, Neal Karlinsky, ABC News, Seattle.
And let's get more on this now from Paul Gigot, who runs the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, and Katrina Vander, Heuvel, editor and publisher of The Nation. Paul, let me begin with you. You heard the mayor. He says Seattle will be a model.
Well, if it's a model, we'll find out if it works. But I think what he's going to find out is when you raise the cost of labor, you just price a lot of people out of the labor market, particularly the young, the least skilled, teenagers, people who want to go in and get on that basic bottom rung of the economic ladder and move up. Look, I've worked for the minimum wage, $2 an hour back in the 70s. I had jobs that, what did I learn? I learned to show up on time. I learned certain skills, and I learned I didn't want to make the minimum wage for the rest of my life, so I better get an education.
What about that argument, Katrina, that this will squeeze the young people out of jobs and that employers are going to move more and more to automation more quickly, which they're already doing?
Listen, this is smart economics, it's good politics, and it's morally right. First of all, only 1 out of 10 minimum wage workers today are a teenager, a young person. Who are the real job creators in this country? It's a strong middle class. How do you get a strong middle class? You put money in the pockets of low-wage workers who can then buy. They create jobs. They create growth. It's a winning issue. 76% of Americans support this, and it's transpartisan. It's Republicans, et cetera. And morally, what does it say about America? If you're an American and you work full-time and you live in poverty, it's a broken economic system. Henry Ford had it right, a good capitalist. He put money in the pockets of his workers to buy cars, and he created a middle class.
That's being echoed now by the CEO of McDonald's, Don Thompson, who says he's going to not oppose the minimum wage increase. They understand people have money in their pockets, they spend it.
Well, what they're going to do is probably McDonald's going to hire a lot more people over time. They're going to have kiosks. They're going to have automation. And he's a big company with a decent profit margin, but a lot of the people who employ the minimum wage workers are low margin businesses, restaurants, cafes, retail. They're the ones who can't afford to pass the costs along. So what they do is they don't hire people.
The biggest employer of low-wage workers, Walmart. I mean, Walmart is being subsidized by taxpayers because their workers can't afford food or health care. The taxpayers are paying food stamps. Walmart is the most profitable company in America. So we're getting socked as taxpayers on both ends. There are enlightened businesses, Costco, StrideRite, Trader Joe's, healthy wages, healthy profits.
Big businesses with big profit margins. Walmart doesn't mind sticking it to the competition, to the small businessman. They can afford it, so they don't mind. They play politics, and they say, oh, well, we'll go along with it. And then it's their competitors who...
But there are studies that have demolished the idea that increasing the minimum wage will cost low-wage workers jobs.
The congressional budget.
That congressional budget office showed the benefits of raising the minimum wage outweigh the cost. You lift 1 million people, nearly 1 million, out of poverty, and you give 25 million people more money in their pockets. 500,000
low-wage jobs would be lost if the minimum wage is increased to $9, said the CBO.
Quick note on the politics here. You've seen Mitt Romney, you've seen Rick Santorum, other top Republicans now come out for minimum wages. Katrina said 76% of the public for it.
It always polls well, because the average American instinct is to say, yeah, I think people should get a raise. What they don't see are the jobs that are never created, the poor people who never get the job. And that's harder to detect, and it's harder to show up in polls. But it's interesting. When that 500,000 job figure from CBO came out, the Republicans in Congress said, you know what? That's a very powerful argument, and I don't think it's going to pass.
You know what?
The last word.
It's about the values of this country. If we are a country that believes in a strong middle class, in healthy families, we need rules of the road to do that. And I think hiking the minimum wage, by the way, if productivity gains, enormous productivity gains of the last 4 decades were factored in, the minimum wage today would be $22. We need to have a sense of fairness in this country that also is good for business and the economy.
Got to take a break. Thank you both very much. We'll be right back with the Powerhouse Roundtable's take on Bo Bergdahl and the Hillary launch.